Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a pretty small Tuesday night slate here, Nate, in the NBA. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at a pretty good matchup depending on who's playing in it. We've got the Mavs in New Orleans taking on those Pellies. Minus 3.5 for the Mavs. I'll just say real quick, I know we're going to go through the lines here, but it is very interesting, as I said, with Zion and BI both questionable right now, that they are almost 4-point favorites in it. So we'll get into all things that. Want to make sure you do like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Check out all these game videos we're bringing you each and every weekday. Also have our great player props video. Already started very hot on the season as we ended it, and spent most of last season pretty hot on these player props, hitting at a really nice clip. So make sure to check those out moving forward. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have our great written content for you guys all season long, and our odds finder tool where you can go ahead and make sure you're shopping NBA lines to the best of your ability across U.S. sports books all season long. Nate, let's go ahead and get into that little 4-game slate in the NBA on Tuesday night.
Yeah, aside from this Mavs game, we got Wizards -5 at home against Detroit. We got the Pelicans. Of course, this game we're talking about are +3.5 right now at home against the Mavs. Thunder +10 at home against the Clippers. And then the other game we break down is Suns -2.5 in Phoenix against the champs, the Warriors. Separate video up about that one. Yeah, this is going to really depend on the injury news we get, whether Zion's going to play after suffering a hip pointer there on Sunday, and Brandon Ingram suffered a concussion. Trey Murphy stepped in, played really well there as they fell to Utah in overtime. Herb Jones is also questionable for this one. So really, you could argue certainly 3 of the 5 starters for the Pelicans, extremely important guys here. And even if they were at full strength, I'm kind of leaning towards the Mavericks. I mean, I hope that the spread doesn't increase too much if those guys are out. Because I don't know if it really matters that much in terms of, I think the Pelicans will still be competitive. I don't see them getting blown out at home without Zion and or Ingram. But the Mavs just grinding out wins per usual. But they haven't really had to play much this year. 2 games thus far. One of the few teams that have that extra rest here early in the season. In those games, they're number 2 in both defensive efficiency and offensive efficiency. Their only blip being that they gave it up late to the Suns in a game that we thought on the opener the Suns would come out guns blazing, and they struggled at first, but then they did eventually exact that revenge against Dallas, and then the Mavs turn around and just stomp out a really good Memphis Grizzlies team. So it's working right now with Christian Wood added to the fold. I don't know why people looked at the Mavs and said, what did they do this offseason? They didn't do anything. Maybe it's because that was the first move of the offseason, really, before anything had settled. It's like, well, they got a potentially fantastic pick and roll partner for Luka. And yeah, he's 25 points in both games. Got to the free throw line 14 times against Memphis and was a +22 in that game. Huge difference maker. But I think the biggest difference in this particular matchup is the 3-point discrepancy. Like, the Pelicans are the worst 3-point shooting team in the league. They take the fewest. They're all interior, number 1 offensive rebounding rate, 4th in free throws. Well, the Mavs keep you off the line, and they're also number 1 in defensive rebounding so far. You want a bigger sample size. Last year, they allowed the 4th fewest offensive rebounds. And as these guys play more alongside Luka, these guys being the wings, mostly Bullock and DFS, they're just going to get more and more comfortable. And right now, they're second in 3-point percentage early in the season here. Luka in this matchup, in his last 5 against the Pels, 31 points per game, 8.5 boards, 8.5 assists. He had 49 points in the last one. The Mavs as a team hitting 15 threes at 40% in their last 5. They've won 4 of those against the Pelicans. So, and then, lastly, you just look at the trends here. When they're favored, the Mavs went 43-11 last year, 16-4 on the road. And then the Pels as home dogs, 9-20 and 3-10 when they had that rest disadvantage, which they certainly do here, since Dallas, again, has only played 2 games.
Man, I mean, that was a lot of really solid stats that really back up everything you said. I'm very proud of you. I agree with everything you said as well. To be honest, I'm looking for stuff to add, but it's like all the angles that I would look at for here. How did they do last season? Because now we're talking, if they don't have Ingram and Zion, my initial reaction is like, all right, well, we're stars out. Maybe, bets up a little bit. The Ewing theory, right? Like these guys come out and now we've got a bunch of guys behind the two stars that were like, well, they could just come out and play better a la Memphis the way they did last year without Ja. Having both those guys out sucks. That's a big deal. If Herb Jones is out as well, now you're definitely talking about the guy that was picking up Luka, probably right at half court, right? If not a bit over it, and expending all his energy there. So that's a huge loss as well. It's very tough for me to see them able to hang with Dallas if they don't have those guys. If this total's at 225.5 also, I might consider a nice little under on that, parlayed with like maybe the Mavs money line and just kind of get over the need for them to win by a certain amount. Let's say that the Pellies come out and really surprise us with, some of the younger guys that are going to be getting minutes in this case. I would still like the Mavs to pull out the victory, which is why I might feel a little bit better, obviously, about that. But you're totally right on about Christian Wood. And I'm really glad you said it because we mentioned it definitely a bunch in our preseason videos, and it's already proving true that he's a perfect addition for them. I mean, they already have defense across the board. They're not going to be asking him to do that much outside of rebound, which he has done already. But like I said, the key thing here to be a little bit cautious of it, it's before we talk about who should you bet on. Obviously, we like the Mavs, especially without those two guys in. But if those two guys are in, or one of them is in, how does that impact this game? With Zion in, we're talking probably like the attempt for New Orleans to pick that pace up and really, attack and just have him in transition. Because there's plenty of guys behind them that are going to be capable guys like Trey Murphy, as you mentioned. Jose Alvarado will get a bit more time, Larry Nance, and then, maybe you have Jonas on the floor for a bit more, Joval for a bit more time there as well to really, hopefully negate a bit of what Christian Wood's doing and force them to have a guy like JaVale on the floor a bit more. So all that said, like I do, depending on what happens, I guess what I'm saying is if those two guys are not on, I do like a parlay of a nice money line Mavs and the under bet on this one because 225 or so feels high in a Mavs team that is going to play with at a pace below 100 in this game, probably closer to like 96 if they have their way. And they're continuing to be as good a defense as they've been since J-Kidd got there, where they know that they've got a guy who, it's almost like they're following the modern NBA roster structure, which is have a ton of big guys that can guard and shoot the three, and then you throw in one of the best offensive players of this generation in Luka Doncic. And I feel really, really good about what this team can do this season and the fact that they should be able to take care of a Pelicans team without its two best players.
If Zion's in, though, I think we got to like the over, right? I mean, you look at the difference.
What changes it? Yeah.
In how the Pelicans play. I mean, so far this season with him, at least in at least part of the game, they score in at least 122. And it's not that different between Zion and CJ in terms of if they have one of those guys, they're getting about 116 a game. The difference is the pace, though. It's 97 with just CJ. It's 100.7 with Zion. He kind of takes on more of that point guard role, and then pushing the issue. And the Mavs, they were especially slow at home. I mean, it was ridiculously slow how often they went under when they were at home. But it's a little harder to dictate that pace when you're on the road. And I would be a little concerned about their ridiculous efficiency this far. I mean, the second in offensive rating in these two games here. They're shooting 50%. I mean, they shot 50% against Memphis, 43% from the 3-point line. Got to the line 36 times as a team. I mean, that's incredible right there.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, that to put up 137 on Memphis. So, and I don't know. I mean, it's going to depend who's in the lineup, like we said here. But I think if you get either Zion or BI in there, I would lean over. But really, I think the Mavs are going to continue to do what they did last year, all the way to the West Conference Finals, and it's kind of an early statement here against a Pelicans team that's jumping up. I would expect Zion to try to play. I mean, a concussion is a little harder to just get cleared through, but Zion's dealing with a hip bruise, and I think he'll be out there. We'll just see how effective he is, and whether he can stay competent defensively is the biggest question, right? Because when you get put into a million pick and rolls with Luka, and you're not a great pick and roll defender in the first place, there's going to be a lot of good looks for Dallas, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, that on both sides of the ball, Zion means more points for sure. So that's something to look out for. I think, I don't know what the deal is with those two guys playing. I don't want to try to predict it. I just know that if I'm able to, I'm going to be Hawkeyeing it. And as soon as I see an actual definitive report on on the two of them or one of them, bet accordingly to how we said. If both of them are out, immediately hitting that money line and Mavs money line in the under. Zion plays, might see what that does to the total. If it stays at about 224, I'd feel pretty good about it. If both of them play, I don't know. Now I'm at a bit more of a loss, to be honest with you. I like the angle of one or both of them not playing, obviously, for the Mavs in this early season. So that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Definitely make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us as we'll be back each and every weekday of this NBA regular season. So until we see you next, happy betting.